So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our first Data Science in the News webinar for 2023. So along with the Queensland Academy of the Arts and Sciences, we launched this webinar series in 2020 at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic as a way to stay connected with you and also to be able to talk about the important issues around us while bringing a data perspective to these kinds of topics. So we'll begin by acknowledging the Yagara and Turrbal people here as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay our respects to their laws, their traditions, their elders and their creation spirits. And we recognise that these lands have always been places of learning and teaching and research. I'm Kerry Mengerson. I'm a Distinguished Professor of Statistics here at QUT, and I'm the Director of the Centre for Data Science at QUT, and I'm the facilitator for today's discussion. So we thought a good way to start our webinar series for this year would be to get our data-filled crystal balls and to gaze into them and to look ahead at what might be in store for 2023. And what are the cool new trends, ideas and solutions for this year? And what are some of the challenges that we might be up against? So who better to help us answer these questions than our own leads in our Centre for Data Science. And so what we've done is assemble a panel of experts at QUT who are all working in different areas and leading different domains of data science in our centre. So we have Professor Margot Brereton, who's from QUT's School of Computer Science and the co-lead of our centre's human-centred AI research program. Welcome, Margot, and thank you. We have Associate Professor Kate Helmstedt. She's from QUT's School of Mathematical Sciences, and she's our co-lead in the Centre's Environment and Natural Systems domain. Welcome, Kate. We have Dr. Bernadette Hyland-Wood from QUT's School of Communications, and Bernadette is the co-lead in our Centre's Responsible Data Science domain. Welcome, Bernadette. We have Dr. Charlie McLennan. She's from QUT's School of Business, and she's the co-lead of our Centre's Social Systems domain. Welcome, Charlie. And finally, we have Dr. Paul Wu. He's from QUT's School of Mathematical Sciences, and he's the co-lead of our Centre's Sports Systems domain. Welcome, Paul. So we have this great panel with us, and what we're going to ask is for them to explore the topics of human-computer interaction, conservation, climate change, responsible data science, business and sports. A great panel, a great array of challenges and exciting opportunities for 2023, looking through the lens of data. So we'll begin with Professor Margot Brereton. And over to you, Margot, for 5 minutes to talk. We'll go through each of the panellists with 5 minutes of discussion about your particular perspective on this question, and then we'll come together as a group for some general discussion. So over to you, Margot.
Great. Thanks very much, Kerry. I thought I would talk about ChatGPT just because it's in the news and we're asked to talk about something in the news. So. But I'm not an expert on ChatGPT. So I thought I'd ask ChatGPT to get a feel for it, and because I want to talk about human AI interaction. And so I said to ChatGPT, please write me a sentence about ChatGPT and implications for human AI interaction. And here's what it said. ChatGPT represents a significant advancement in human AI interaction, enabling more natural and human-like conversations, but also raising ethical considerations around AI's role and accountability in society. So ChatGPT, it stands for, it's released by a company called OpenAI. Stands for a generative pre-trained transformer, and it's basically uses historical massive language text data, massive text corpuses, and it generates human-like text, so it's a predictive text kind of approach. That's a definition from Wikipedia. The issues and opportunities raised by ChatGPT, well, first of all, I think if you use it in advanced ways, it might attribute things. But when I tried to get definitions of human-centered AI, it pulled everything from off the internet, but it didn't say where it got anything from. So this is quite interesting to me. There's attribution is history, but in some respects, ideas come from the social milieu anyway. So isn't this just advancing our ability to sort of access the social milieu? There are concerns about entrenched historical bias in terms of language, ideas, and so on, that by using a large corpus of language, you're encoding all that. I was just talking to a prospective student who was saying that he had a whole conversation with ChatGPT, asking ChatGPT to talk about what it was like being a Frenchman in 1917, and also an understanding from a conversation with an understanding grandma. He was talking about forming virtual friendships, linking live avatars for text input and output and so on. And so you can really see the potential. He felt that these conversations were really engaging. So it can be very creative. And what I want to say about it is we've just done a big literature survey on human-centered AI. This is my last slide. And if we map out this landscape, it goes from human-led to AI-led, from design-led to context-led. And you can see a lot of the research started in explainable, interpretable AI. It's moved into human-machine teaming, but much more recently, we have a lot more concern about ethical AI, accountability, values embedded in AI. And we've got a lot of attempts to do more human-centered AI, a lot of methods we found. But the really interesting area here, and the one that really is exposed by ChatGPT, is our interaction with AI. What do we do with it? How do we interact with it? You know, what are the implications for how we set student assignments, how they learn to critique things with AI? And there's a very interesting area called contestable AI, which is coming up, which is this idea that if an AI tells you something, you can put in a scenario and say, well, hang on, what if I was older and another gender and this and that? Then what would you tell me? And so you can start to analyze it and contest it. So I think what's interesting to me is, for all of this research, this area here is really going to open up. And I think that's what we're going to see in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margot. That's an excellent start to this discussion. I think there's it's obviously a topic that's on almost everybody's lips at the moment, is ChatGPT, and so it's a great way to kickstart it. And you've certainly been able to frame it in the context of a lot of other areas that are of interest, and sort of put it in the centre and this of what we might see this year. That leads us really nicely to the next speaker, which is Bernadette Hyland-Wood. So over to you, Bernadette.
So thank you. I think that was a bit like a Star Wars, in the sense that Professor Brereton jumped to the current discussion in and around ChatGPT 3, but I'd like to give a very, very brief historical context because there's an awful lot of both hype and hysteria around large language models. And I want to, I guess, at a meta level, say we've been working on this for 2 generations, and just quickly paint a picture to ease people's concerns. So I'm just very briefly going to touch on what are bots, ChatGPT 3 with a little bit of a different focus, and generative AI. So many on this call are probably familiar with ELISA, but I'm just going to quickly go over kind of where that all came from. just after World War II, there were US and allied partners such as our colleagues in the UK that invested heavily in human-computer research. Many people on this webinar hopefully are familiar with Alan Turing in the 1950s. And if you're not, please watch the very poignant movie, The Imitation Game, which is the 2014 movie with Patrick Cumberbatch based on his biography called Alan Turing, The Enigma. He's considered to have saved millions of lives through his approach to research during World War II. But later his work led to the Turing test that theorizes a truly intelligent machine will be indistinguishable from a human during a text-only conversations. And these ideas laid the foundations of our modern chatbot revolution. So I won't go into the details around ELIZA. If you take a class of mine on chatbots that I teach, I go into that in a lot of detail. There are many types, and through the 80s and 90s, including while I was at university at UC Berkeley and UCLA, there were a lot of advances in AI, such as Jabberwocky and other chatbots that simulate natural human chat in interesting and often entertaining and humorous ways. And people may remember ALICE, which is an acronym that stands for Artificial Linguistic Internet Computer Entity, that was a natural language processing bot and applied heuristic patterns to matching rules to human input in conversation. But it still could not pass the Turing test. The US continued to pour money into computational linguistics and offered competitive jobs and salaries to people with backgrounds like mine. But I, at the time, did not go into that world. And I mention all of this to highlight that what we see today with large language models, or LLMs, as chatbot is referred to, it has this long lineage of applied research and development. In fact, 2 generations. Many of us would be familiar with examples of chatbots like Google's Alexa, Amazon, toys in our homes. Today we use them, and it's a form of AI when we use Microsoft Word and it predicts the next word or some other editor, or Grammarly, right? Those are forms of AI that have been trained on big data sets. So I'd argue that in the last 10 years, we've all used some form of both AI as well as specifically chatbots to order food, get it delivered, book reservations for hotels, for travel, etc. Long story short, we are here today with ChatGPT-3, which, as Margot said earlier, stands for Chat-Based Generative Pre-trained Transformer. I would say Alice was probably a better name. It has a freemium model. I've been using the free version to do everything from writing simple Python code to doing some early stages of policy research development around Indigenous data and generating ideas for a new podcast series on the social and political impacts of data-driven technologies. Some things to keep in mind about ChatGPT-3 particularly is it's largely funded by Microsoft to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. It has competitors such as Lambda that was developed by Google. Lambda's been trained on 137 billion parameters and 1.5 trillion words, which is largely data off of the open web. There are also about 20 prominent ChatGPT alternatives that can be used for similar kinds of things, but some focus on areas of searching or coding or language translation and other forms of research. Something else to keep in mind is that whatever training set these tools have been trained on kind of ends at a certain date. So in the case of ChatGPT-3, it's been trained on data until its 30 November 2022 release. And since then, there have been no new training sets. So it wouldn't include information after November 2022. ChatGPT is based on a statistical modeling. Sociologist Alex Hanna and computational linguist Emily Bender call it mathy math. Outputs are next word predictions. They're not based on rules of human reasoning. And so all the issues in statistics that are well known to statistical researchers, such as bias, both conscious and unconscious, are present due to the training set. So I'll end with a slide regarding issues and concerns. Right now, within the international peer review community, Nature is trying to figure out what the rules should be around publications, how and whether authors acknowledge that they've used tools like large language models, transparency about how that AI has been used. My initial response to this is that it's going to be a really good conversation and a really good time to be involved in this area of research, because it's very robust and we're at this big disruptive point that only comes along every 10 or 15 years. And I was privileged to have been here at one of these points about 30 years ago in the early days of the web. And it completely transformed how government operated and how education worked. And I feel like we're at one of these big disruptive junctions again, and it will help. But you almost, I feel, need to have quite a bit of expertise and background to be able to use it well. From a policy writing perspective, it was super impressive because of the breadth of the content that it had consumed. So I didn't see the usual concept of silos, academic silos reflected. But it has very, very significant implications regarding copyright, intellectual property. So I guess my closing words would be, avoid the hype and the hysteria. No single person can understand how, or team within a platform company can understand how these large language models work, but they're very much here with us to stay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was excellent, Bernadette, and it was great to set ChatGPT in the context, in a historical context, so that we can see that it's really a natural evolution of the work that's happened, a lot of work that's happened over the past couple of decades. So thank you. I'm going to switch, and so we'll come back to ChatGPT in the discussion, but I just wanted to flag that you have this product which is it's a mind as large as a planet, but I was using it for Christmas cards, and so I'm thinking, well, that's surely it's got a better use than that, but it was very effective. So I'm going to switch tack now, and I'm going to ask Kate Helmstedt to tell us, Kate, looking into this globe, what do you see for 2023?
Thanks, Kerry. So I work at the interface of mathematics and data science in the environment, and 2023 is an incredibly exciting time to be doing that for some sad reasons and some exciting reasons. So right now, unfortunately, everything's kind of getting worse when we're thinking about the environmental space. And so unfortunately, for the world, that means that there are a lot of questions that come up about how we can use maths to understand and better manage and protect environmental systems. So that means it's really exciting to be from the perspective of wanting to find mathematical and data science questions in these spaces, and kind of find ways that we can be genuinely really, really useful. The other reason it's really important, it's really exciting, particularly in this year in Australia, is that I think the political and social understanding of an interest in environmental protection has really been changing, and it changed kind of slowly for a while. So if we think back to the 90s, it was all save the rainforest and save the whales. And there was maybe an opinion that the people who really cared about those two things were, strange in some way. But now that conversation has changed a lot. So people know that ecosystems like the reef, the Great Barrier Reef, are really important, Antarctica. Our second, in my opinion, second most kind of powerful political leader in the Labour Party at the moment, Tanya Plibersek, has been put into the role of environment minister. And so that's really reflecting this time when we have this opportunity to do something that people really care about, and the opportunity to get kind of wrapped up into real world implications of the work. And it's also coming at a really exciting time from a data availability perspective. So when we think about environmental systems, a ton of it is spatial. And in most of these systems, we kind of didn't used to have that much information about the systems. But when we think about things like remote sensing and satellite imaging, suddenly we're getting this like huge influx of data and information. So in Antarctica, let's say, the emperor penguin, which is a species that everyone loves, that everyone knows a lot about, that is very well studied. A couple of months ago, they found a new breeding colony, or an existing breeding colony of it that they didn't know about before from satellite imaging. And that's because the satellite imaging is getting way better and our ability to process it is getting better. And at the same time as the remote sensing provides us with data, we've also got this cool opportunity in this space to say we can use mathematical and statistical tools and methods that we've been talking about for a long time, like optimal design or optimal surveying or value of information. We can take those theoretical and methodological approaches we have and really answer questions about, okay, when we have this influx of data suddenly in the environmental space, how should we be allocating resources? How should we be doing things like these exciting new technological monitoring like drones and eDNA? We can answer questions about how people should be using those in the field. AI also, aside from being really good at processing data, AI is really, really good at helping to guide and make decisions, particularly when you're trying to make decisions over long time periods or in really complex systems. And that's what we have in the environment. The systems are really complex and we kind of don't manage them once, we manage them in the long term. And so there's a lot of opportunities at the moment for AI and AI approaches and new AI approaches to be able to tackle these really complex, really long-term types of problems that are coming up in 2023 and over the next decade for environmental management. The final really exciting part, I think that's emerging maybe over the past couple of years and increasingly in 2023 as well, is that mathematicians in this space are being asked into big interdisciplinary collaborations with the types of fields that historically maybe we haven't collaborated with so much. So social science, economics, ecology, planning, management, all of these fields have to come together to answer these questions that are really important socially and politically at the moment. And that's giving us these really, really exciting opportunities to come in as the mathematicians and learn the language of these other fields and try and tackle these problems all together. And it's just incredibly exciting.
Thanks very much, Kate. Yes, it is an exciting area, and I think the opportunity for data science to play a really strong role in the environment and in these conversations is really on us. And so 2023, we hope, is going to be a great year for that. And certainly our awareness of climate change and environmental issues has really, we're able to express that. So I think that we'll see some advances in that area as well. Okay, I'm going to change tack again. And I'm going to focus on Charlie and invite Charlie to give us a perspective from the business area. Charlie, what's happening in 2023?
Thanks, Kerry. So yes, I've got a very different area, and what I'm going to talk about today is actually commercializing and valuing data. And then I just hope my slides will move. There we go. Okay, so yes. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit firstly about adopting data science because it just remains a huge challenge for businesses. While businesses and government are increasing their investment in data, most really struggle to obtain insights that make real differences or deliver value and return on investment. Data is often incredibly undervalued. It's taken for granted, not consistently funded, or not leveraged for competitive advantage. Within most organisations, there's often differing perceptions and differing languages around data. People don't really understand and much like what do I do with it? How do I use it? Things like that. And there's a real range in terms of people who are actually using it versus those who have nothing to do with it or believe they can just base decisions off gut feel. So there's been a lot of research done on different barriers to adoption, and some of that includes things like strategic inflexibility, lack of skilled data scientists, difficulties relating to the technical aspects of data science, the ethical and privacy or security challenges. But research is really calling at the moment for more proactive approaches around the strategies for addressing challenges and mitigating risks, as well as enabling businesses to really adopt data science. So what I'm interested in looking at is the diffusion of data science within our businesses, but also within industries and our economies. And I'm really interested in the people side of that diffusion, because we know that under diffusion of innovation theory, that often the innovators tend to lead this change, but then there's like this huge chasm where there's a lot of people who just can't adopt a lot of these sorts of technologies. So how do we bring businesses into the future? Because often the leaders within businesses are sitting in the great majority of people who don't know how to adopt data science. So I'm particularly interested in how do we take businesses on that journey. So I've done a little bit of research, and there's ways to overcome risk to data science adoption. And that is, look, most people actually want to change. They want to adopt these technologies. But I guess the biggest barrier often is they don't see the need to often. So ways that you can incorporate change into your business to involve the senior leaders. It really needs to be led from the top if you want a business to adopt data science. You need to communicate the change and offer training as required, identify the root cause of resistance, and address the 4 quadrants for unlocking change. So really understand that underlying problem of why they won't change, and then address the 4 quadrants. So in terms of change versus no change, and if it's positive or negative, there's little ways that you can address the person's barrier, I guess. So, so looking onto the horizon, what I'm really interested in exploring, and I think the literature is moving towards over the next year, is what are the mechanisms for unlocking the diffusion of data science? What strategies do businesses need to adopt data science by drawing on organizational change theory and things like that? Understanding the stage of maturity and data science adoption differences across different industries, countries, economies, things like that. Identifying those effective strategies for creating and growing data ecosystems, and then understanding the role that academics and researchers play in helping industry to harness data-driven processes and practices. So that's my presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Shirley. That's excellent, and a lot of those points there really resonate with the types of conversations that we all have with organisations. So I think it'll be a great year for businesses as well. There's a lot more tools and opportunities now for being able to engage with the data and being able to use that for really considered decision making. So thank you. I'm going to turn now to our last panellist, and so Dr. Paul Wu. And Paul, again, a different perspective now from the sports system side.
Thanks, Kerry. So sports, everybody knows that data science is very hot. It's exploded on the scene, but maybe not as obvious is that sports data science has also exploded. So globally, the industry was actually already worth $2.5 billion in 2021. It's projected to grow to $16.5 billion by 2030. Now, back at home here in Australia, we have a unique opportunity because of the 2032 Brisbane Olympic and Paralympic Games. So there's this real opportunity to use data science and the massive investment in terms of infrastructure of all the different stakeholders across sport, across stadiums, across transport in the city to really benefit society. And now what's interesting is that just last year, at the end of last year, the Australian Institute of Sport, the AIS, developed this new national strategy, which is to win and win well. And that's really nice because it's not just winning at all costs, that there's this real recognition and of the human dimension. And so that means that there's a need for a holistic, collaborative, and interdisciplinary, echoing some of the points that were made earlier, approach to have evidence-based. So it's not just, oh yeah, I think that's about it. She'll be right. Evidence-based, athlete-centered approach to a combination of not winning, so the performance side of things, to injury prevention and management and well-being. It's kind of this triangle. Now, of course, there are many more dimensions to this: psychology, nutrition, sleep, and so on. But in a nutshell, it's this kind of whole systems perspective. Now, currently, these are managed separately, but the problem, of course, is that negative outcomes such as occurrence of an injury or lack of well-being, resulting in lack of participation in the sport, for instance, are so detrimental that it's become a national priority to find better solutions. So it's very exciting because there are many research and application opportunities, right? You do the research and then, well, how can we put this into practice and get feedback? So one of these areas, of course, is in personalized performance, right? It's not just about performance and everybody just follows the same training regime, but how can we personalize this training regime to you? And of course, the other side of that is team performance for team sports. There's a lot of opportunity in AI for injury prediction and prevention. And then there's a trend towards looking at not just the current data, but also what is your history of injuries? What is the history of this person in order to better prevent and manage injuries? And of course, bring it together in this kind of holistic athlete perspective, which is challenging because data is captured in at different scales at different times, not always at the same time. They're very different in terms of the data. There can be very high density, very rapid sensor data to qualitative data about how someone feels. And so in this kind of integration is a real challenge. And there's also expert knowledge too, from coaches and athletes and who have many years of experience. And some other areas include all the new technologies that are emerging. We've talked about ChatGPT, but in the sensor space, in terms of wearable technologies that become more widely available, even genetics data, these kind of data-driven biomedical innovations, another growing opportunity. And of course, with that is, with all this diverse data collection, how can we actually have good data governance, ethics, and integration? So it's, I guess, in the sports world, it's a bit of a reflection of the bigger data science challenges overall. And of course, related to that is improving the management of sports services, the business of sport, from a community perspective and to the elite perspective. So to echo Kate and Charlie's comments, it's really about the interdisciplinary, bring together sports scientists, the practitioners, the coaches, athletes, who may be elite, but also community as well, to the researchers in psychology, nutrition, and so on, to data scientists across AI, machine learning, statistics, mathematics, and so on. And to this end, what's really, I think, promising, exciting is that the CSIRO have invested about 7 million in cash and in kind, along with AIS and many of the other national sports organizations, sports themselves, and technology organizations coming together to provide training opportunities to develop that next generation of capability in sports data science. And with a view, ultimately, to have a national sports data analytics hub. So I guess to summarize, one of the concrete opportunities coming out of this in this area, I think, is these the higher degree research scholarship opportunities, about 30 of them, in addition to all the exciting research opportunities in our green and gold runway to 2032.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Yes, 2032 is certainly something that's on our horizon now, and is a very exciting opportunity for all of us, and is going to really focus our attention in many ways. I liked the points you were making around combining different types of data, and also very interdisciplinary work, and also the opportunity for people to train and to work in data science in sports and data analytics in sports, so and data science and AI. So if there's any of our listeners or any of the listeners' networks that are interested in taking up scholarships and training in that area, we would love to hear from you. So we have 30 opportunities to fill in HDRs in that area. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for your perspectives on the topic. I'm going to come now to some discussion, and I encourage people in the audience, please, to put their questions in the chat. I see that there's one in the Q&A. Please add them there, and we'll come to those in a minute. But I'm just going to start with just a couple of questions. One is that a couple of you have touched on how the areas that you talked about in data science and this 2032 will affect individuals. But I want you just to focus a little bit more on that. So in terms of personalisation, or in terms of the individual, from your different perspectives, how is this area of this thing that we call data science actually going to touch individuals this year? Okay, I'm going to start first with Margot. So, Margot, how do you think that individuals should sort of engage with this, embrace it, benefit from it? Like, what's happening to them? What's happening to me this year?
Oh, well, I think it's important to understand how it's going to impact your work, your life. Certainly for academics, they are going to have to think about how some of these conversational large language models affect how they motivate students, how they assess them, but potential consequences, traumatic consequences for things that get things wrong. I think one of the questions in the chat was talking about stress, because if you've got some sort of insurance model, or what was the name of robo-debt, the way that we apply AI coarsely, crudely, wrongly, it can have huge impact on people. So that's why I think the interaction with models, understanding the context of use of models, is really important. The AI world has in its mind that context is now provided in large, massive data sets, or text data sets, or through cameras going through the world that can create a virtual world for you. So context is now provided. It's not but actually, the real human context is quite different from these simulated contexts. And so we really need to understand that the consequences are felt in the real human world, and we need to understand, and we need much better constructs for linking between these simulated contexts and our real contexts. I'll stop there.
Okay. No, thank you, Margot. That's very interesting. Who else would like to comment on this? What's in it for me this year? Kate, and then Bernadette.
Yeah, look, I think that data science has been impacting people's lives for as long as data science has existed. Efficiencies change people's lives. Inefficiencies that come out of data science change people's lives. I think we're in a really weird space right now, because with COVID, suddenly, like, the data literacy and data interest in the general public just, grew overnight. Suddenly my non-maths, non-stats friends are saying, like, oh, can you believe that the tables are only being given in PDF form and not being given in Excel form? They've never thought about data before. And so I think right now we're kind of being watched a little bit more by the public and a little bit more insight. And I think that's an opportunity for us, right, to really link our data and our data science and our approaches to the ways, and take responsibility and credit for the ways that we're changing the world.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Great. Bernadette.
Yes, I would underscore that. I'll speak specifically to people like you who and others who may be involved in advising government and industry users, because people go to you to see you as an expert on data science, and the need to take to heart the centrality of access to data. So my research is around COVID-19 and how much of that data was actually available to Australia's complex systems modelers, epidemiologists, biological modelers, et cetera. And the science on this is really well established. The technology and the know-how about how to make data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, fair data is very well understood. But yet senior executives in government and product managers in industry kind of haven't entirely absorbed how the technology exists, but they don't maybe fully appreciate the social dynamics of that and the organizational culture aspects that they themselves have a very important role in addressing, that Charlie talked about the importance of having executive support. But importantly, specifically to this conversation, understanding the unintended consequences of incomplete data, sparse data, biased data, and other aspects of data that increasingly data scientists understand, thanks in part, I would say, to the support of social scientists who've put concepts around the value-laden nature of data and algorithmic bias on their radar. So I don't think it'll be easy. I think that culturally, we all have different vocabularies and we're comfortable with different groups of people. I witness this when I go to data hackathons and I see the MDs form groups versus the data scientists who tend to hang together. It's hard even in groups like that where they actively want to address issues like algorithmic bias in healthcare research. But because people speak different languages and use different vocabularies, professional languages, they're often uncomfortable with each other. So we all have a role to play in maybe building those bridges and building those networks between experts.
Okay, thanks, Bernadette. You touched on one issue there that I want to just step across to, and it's one of the questions put in the chat, which is around the issue of data storage and security. We have increased data and connectivity. Would anybody like to speak to this? It's an issue in 2023. And I'm going to just ask Charlie first. So, Charlie, in the business world, how much of an issue is this? Is it something that's on people's radar for this year?
It's massive, actually. And as we all know, we've just had our own cybersecurity breach here at QUT. So like that then filters out to other businesses that we're working with and things like that. And so it's on everyone's mind. I've been having to have meetings with all different people about this sort of topic at the moment. So I think in the future, it's really going to be senior managers need to kind of lead this change to be thinking about it so that they reduce the risk and really consider the issues. Because if not, we're going to have like problems in the future. We just won't have the governance structures in place, and businesses might try and adopt data science, but they'll fail. And then there's all these new businesses that are getting created and might not have the governance structures. And so they're going to come into legal problems as well. So I think there's a massive challenge for us in this space.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Would anybody else like to talk to that?
Where there are massive challenges, there are massive opportunities. I think the biggest worry is that people, managers, product managers, executives cannot afford to put their head in the sand, especially as it relates to a lot of these issues around security and data. There's a lot of fear that's in part generated by industry management consultants sometimes, just saying you need to go with us and we're going to help you address these issues. And that's problematic. It can be problematic. So developing an internal competency within your organization to be comfortable with this language and know what the limits are and concerns and preparation for the inevitable disaster that will happen. There will inevitably be cybersecurity breaches. Boards should all be talking about this. They all should have a strategy in place for ransomware, because they best assume that they will be hacked. Where there are people involved, there are going to be leaks of digital information. So I think no longer can the board, all the way through the executive management team and the product management team, sort of say it's the tech people deal with that. All of the security and storage and data use capture of data, storage of data, all are now, anybody who has any kind of line or operational responsibility should be having these conversations and have the vocabulary and the conceptual model of how to deal with them and the plans in place, because they will happen.
And just to add to that, Kerry, data is everyone's business nowadays. So just leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Margot, did you want to add to that? I saw your.
Well, yeah, just to add that I think when we're talking about security and so on, the human frailties are the ones that are played upon as well to get people to give away their data by pretending you're a lovely young person from somewhere else who's very emotionally interested in you and so on. So so much of the way data gets breached is, I mean, yeah, the cryptography works really well, but that's not where the breaches are going to happen. It's going to happen through the way that people use systems. It's all about use. And so, yeah, that's why I'm nodding. It's very much everyone's business, because you have to understand how you store data, where you put data, what your responsibilities are around how other people access it and so on. And you have to be alert to not being scammed by texts that come in saying that, I've lost my credit card, mum, please send to this account, which of course you wouldn't know the account number. Do you just send the money?
Yeah, thanks, Margot. And that brings me to another topic, Paul, I'm going to throw to you for this. It's the question of, like, one thing is about keeping your data, but I'm also keeping your data safe, but I'm also interested now because there is this question of who owns the data. And so if, for example, we're giving data to different organisations, or if we're actually having data collected about us, like this issue of data sovereignty, like who owns my data, is something that's really coming up. And I'm guessing that's really important in the sports area as well. Have you seen this as a phenomenon in the sports area?
Yeah, that's a great point, Kerry. Actually, in the elite athlete space, there's a move, gradual as it may be, towards the athlete owning all their data. Now, there's some challenges to that as well. Does that mean, well, how does the coach they make use of this data? Well, what are some of the protocols, and how do we make this work in practice? But I think it also reflects the enormous opportunity, right? So I guess, like, if you were not on the Olympic team, but we also have quite a bit of data, like all your data from your wearables, which more and more you'll be able to download and obtain for yourself. Some of your medical data from MyGov and so on, you are able to access. And all the other data that you might collect about yourself, for example, your own weight and your other characteristics. So this is something I think that's affecting elite athletes, certainly, and this kind of owning your data. But then, of course, they're also knowing, so associated with that are challenges of, well, how do we share data in appropriate and safe ways? If I own the data, then how do I keep it safe? It's because now you can't expect everyone to be a data professional, but they need some sort of, I guess, minimum. So there's a minimum literacy, if you will. So, how we talk about financial literacy, they need a minimum data literacy to make use of and protect themselves. The sharing between the different entities, because athletes actually interact with many. For example, it could include your coach, your fellow athletes, the funding organizations such as Australian Institute of Sport. It could include medical staff, physiotherapists, and doctors, and so on. So I think there's an enormous also research potential or need in this field too.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And I'm guessing that translates to other fields as well. I'd like to change tack a little bit now and talk about some of the big societal problems. So we've talked about me, and now I want to talk about me in the context of society. I talked about individuals and talking now about individuals in the context of society. I'm going to ask Kate. So Kate, There's a lot of talks we've said around the environment. We're all aware of climate change and many areas. There's been some disastrous climate events, we are thinking about all the people that are involved in that, but as societies as well, and as our whole environment, we have the opportunity to contribute through data science. So this year, in 2023 and going forward, should we be optimistic about the future of the environment, or really just, are we all doomed?
It's a really good question. And if we were just looking at the data, so if we are just looking at this counterfactual process of disasters are getting worse, the reef is getting bleached more often, the Antarctic ice sheet is collapsing. If you're just looking at that, then I think it's really, really easy to feel pessimistic about some of these social things. I think it's really exciting for us as people embedded in data science who know or can understand some of the really cutting edge new processes that are coming through. And it's really exciting because they're kind of on the precipice of making real impact, right? So we know as data scientists and people who look from a methodological perspective that the first kind of step towards this quantitative driven impact is building the tools. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing such exciting tools coming out from our group here at QUT, from other data science and mathematics departments in the world, but also through those interdisciplinary collaborations. And I'm stoked, right? So I'm seeing that when those methodologies start getting implemented to do things like, first of all, prevent these things from happening, so really trying to reduce these pressures that are happening, then the second thing is just in a context where they are happening, more information and more understanding and more predictive ability about them allows us to kind of mitigate the impacts on society. So if we can't stop the floods from happening, then what we can do is respond in a more informed and optimal way. And so I think data science is doing those two really exciting things for society at the moment that we can be optimistic about.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. That's great. I'm going to ask Charlie as well, in the context of social systems and business systems. Like, should we're facing a lot of change in our fiscal situation here in Australia. So should we be optimistic or should we be doomed?
No, I think we should be optimistic because we have the opportunity to drive change and to make things happen. And using data science, you can actually predict things. You can change the way you respond to events and what's happened in the past and improve what we're doing. So not only improve, if you think about the Olympic Games, improve the way we navigate around the city, improve the way we interact with visitors and things like that, all the way through to, how do we improve businesses to be more sustainable and efficient and things like that. So I think we're very optimistic, should be very optimistic at the moment. I think we're at the precipice of being able to really solve some grand challenges in our society.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. I'm mindful of the time and I see that there's some great questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to just touch on these and ask one person to address them. There's a question in the Q&A about the way that AI is being developed and applied incurs substantial human costs. And how can we as a community of data scientists do more to enforce accountability and safety in ethical AI development? Would anybody like to take that on and just talk for 30 seconds?
Sure, I'll just say that.
Thank you, Margot.
Yeah, look, I think it's very, what we see in some of our research is just that there's so many complex techniques to get your head around that a lot of AI people aren't actually really in the context of use. And I think really trying to bridge where the models are developed with where the consequences are felt is a really necessary practice, and that some of that comes through collaboration as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Margot. Great. Now, there's another question in the Q&A, which is around, how ChatGPT and other similar technologies are affecting student learning at QUT or elsewhere. And I guess that's a topic that's discussed in many places. So would anybody like to just touch on that for 30 seconds?
I think it's something that I'm working already with the Creative Industries Education and Social Justice Academic Integrity Board, talking about how we're going to cope with this. So I think understanding within the academy what our ability is to say, do or don't do something, and then our ability to actually regulate it, identify it and regulate it is very, very important. So to be honest, I think there's a lot of learning that needs to happen within the academic community about both how to improve the pedagogy of using these tools, as well as some more philosophical and ethical questions with our students to say, if you use these and you present them only as your work, that could be problematic when you go for your job interview, versus use them, express the fact you've used them, and then take the next step about how you fact checked or how you got references for this, or engage with it at a deeper level, which that latter model is how I plan to use it in this semester when I start teaching class. I'm going to encourage them to use ChatGPT-3, but do it in a way that they're explicit and they learn approaches to check their work and leverage it as an assistant as opposed to as a replacement for their effort.
Yeah, thanks, Bernadette. That's very insightful and very positive way as well. Right, so we're coming to the end of the session, and I'd like to ask each one of you another question, or I'd like to ask you to say in 5 words, what's a message to the audience about data science in 2023? What should they be taking away from this? And I'm going to start with Margot.
Well, I might just say optimism, skepticism, and interaction.
Thank you very much, Margot. Now, just for everybody's knowledge, that none of the panelists has known that this question is coming, so it's just been sprung on them. Charlie, what are your 5 words? Or your message in 5 words?
In lesson, hopefully. So I think data is everyone's business.
Perfect. Okay. Paul.
Get healthy, use data, collaborate.
Perfect. Thank you. Kate.
Save the world or try.
Perfect. Bernadette.
Eyes wide open. Do it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, thank you to the panel. You've been amazing, and I've really appreciated your insights and your discussion here and your time. Thank you. I'd like to thank also the Data Centre for Data Science and the Queensland Academy of the Arts and Sciences for sponsoring this webinar. Please keep in touch, because we'll be having these webinars regularly throughout the year as well. And special thanks to Becky Cook and Tim McCougar for all the work behind the scenes. Thank you very much, everybody. And with that, we'll draw this to a close.
Thank you.